Hello, Life in Jesus students, and welcome to our next Ed Puzzle. Just wanted to tell you, I mentioned to keep spreading my channel around, but have not received any more comments. So just know that I'm very disappointed in you. So let's go ahead and get started. No jokes for you today. Today we're talking about marriage, obviously a huge hot button issue, one in which I think many people struggle with the Catholic Church's teaching, one that I think angers a lot of people. And so we're going to kind of dissect that. We're going to look at it and really discuss, try to find some dialogue on this topic, Lab 5, Day 6. So I think one of the things that makes marriage so difficult to talk about is that it's the only sacrament with a dual nature. It's both a civil and a religious institution. And it's going to be important to recognize the difference between those two in order to actually discuss this issue. So if I were to mention baptism or confirmation or first communion or anointing of the sick or holy orders, there's no non-religious equivalent to that, right? You don't get baptized to become a citizen of this country. And yet, you can get married at a courthouse in a non-religious setting, and that is different than what we call the religious marriage, the sacrament. So it's both a civil and a religious. And in order to, like I said, have dialogue about them, it's going to be really important to recognize the difference. So let's talk about that difference. So there's a lot here. According to the Catechism, the matrimonial covenant by which a man and a woman establish between themselves a partnership with the whole life is by its nature ordered towards the good of the spouses and the procreation and education of offspring. So there's a lot there, but marriage in the church's understanding, the church's definition of marriage as a sacrament, right, man and woman, a partnership for the whole of life. So it's a covenant, a sacred bond between two people for their entire lives. That's by its nature, by natural law, it has two purposes. One is the good of the spouses, so they support one another. It's that unitive aspect. And the other is the procreation and education of offspring. So it's about creating out of love. It's about having a family. And that's written into the church's definition of marriage. So even a man and woman who were not open to kids would not be able to get married sacramentally in the church. As I've said before, as a sacrament, marriage expresses and symbolizes God's love, the unitive and procreative side. So the bond between husband and wife mirrors Christ's love, Christ who sacrificed himself for the church, who put the church before even his own desires, that is what a husband and a wife are called to do, to unite to one another, to sacrifice for one another, to support one another. Also, this quote, I think, is really beautiful. It's the nature of love to overflow, to be life-giving. If you ever think about when, and this happened to, a few years back when my brother and sister-in-law had their first kids, but at a certain point, a man and a woman who are together, when their love has grown, they eventually get, sometimes it's called like baby fever, right? They want to have a kid. There's all of a sudden this desire as their love has gotten to a certain point to want that love to overflow, to want that love to literally give birth, to want that love to be life-giving. And there's something really beautiful about that ability to create out of love, which is going to be much of the basis for why the Catholic Church is against same-sex marriage, because by its nature, it does not have the ability to do that in the same way. Sex within marriage is free, right? There's no manipulation, there's no pressure, it's total. It's a gift of your entire self to that person. There's with the partnership of the whole of life. Again, it's faithful, so it's exclusive to that person, and it's fruitful. It has the ability to overflow, to be life-giving. So let's unpack this a little bit. So Catholic marriage is based on the fact that men and women are different yet complementary. And men and women are different. Biologically, they're different. There are some, and I know there's a lot of argument about how much is nature and how much is nurture, how much is how we're raised and socialized. But there are biological fundamental differences between men and women. There are differences in the chemicals, the level of hormones that run through their veins. There's biological differences. There's even some psychological differences in men and women's brains. And right, no one argues this. Biologically, it takes a man and a woman to create a child, or it takes some part of a man and woman to create a child, without getting too explicit in this. Men and women are different biologically yet complementary. There's a natural fitting together in order to create. So marriage is not solely about reproduction. It's not. In the Catholic Church, the purpose is not just to create kids, but it's about creating a loving communion of persons. The idea of the Trinity is that there are three persons united in love, that our God is a communion of persons. And so marriage meant to reflect that, and about creating a communion of persons whose love ideally continues to increase, continues to multiply. So marriage, the institution, the civil institution, and this is specifically in the United States. So marriage is a contract between two people of any gender to be spouses, which provides legal rights, benefits, and protections. So marriage civilly is about the legal term having a spouse, which is going to provide a number of rights, benefits, and protections. So for example, if someone is legally your spouse, you can have joint tax returns when you do your taxes. You can share a bank account with that person. So you couldn't just go with your friend and open up a bank account together, because that could obviously lead to a number of issues. But Jenna and I have a joint bank account. We might do joint tax returns. There are certain visas and immigration statuses for spouses. If you've ever seen the movie The Proposal, right, Ryan Reynolds and Sandra Bullock get married because it would allow her to stay in the United States and not be deported. So there is priority given to spouses of people who are U.S. citizens. There's a marriage rate for insurance. There's inheritance and right to benefits. So let's say in 30 years, if I were to pass away, that my Social Security would go to my legal spouse. There are certain medical decisions and visiting hours, and then there are certain parenting rights and responsibilities. So there's over 1,000 things within the law, within U.S. law, that being a spouse provides. Now, by its definition, let me be very careful about this. People apply a lot of meaning to this contract, but by its definition, right, the United States government cannot write into this definition that it's this sacred bond between two people. That's not the language they use, right? This is a legal agreement between two people to be spouses. And this is what the fight for the legalization of gay marriage was about, right? Much of it was about providing these legal rights to people, that many gay and lesbian couples were upset, right, that they couldn't make medical decisions or couldn't have certain visiting hours if their loved one was in the hospital. So in 2015, the summer of 2015, same-sex marriage was legalized in the United States. So now two men and two women could be legal spouses of one another. So when gay marriage was legalized, the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops said that the legalization of gay marriage was a tragic error. They believe that it harms the common good and that it adversely affects children, that it kind of crumbles the foundation of what a family is. Finding dialogue. So this is obviously a huge hot button issue, and it's one that there's a lot of current debate about, and even a lot of current debate within the church about. right? The many Catholics who are not priest or bishop, many lay Catholics support gay marriage. That's not me putting an opinion on this. That's just the fact. They've done many polls about this. Pope Francis, though not changing doctrine, he sought to welcome and embrace the LGBT community. He sought to find more roles to integrate them into church life. And then one of the things that we'll discuss in class is that the church already recognizes that civil and religious marriage are not the same. Right? So the legalization of gay marriage did not change the religious definition. The government cannot force the Catholic Church to bestow the sacrament on same marriage couples or same-sex couples, excuse me. And to recognize that there's a difference between civil and religious. And hopefully that's where some of that dialogue can happen, recognizing that the Catholic Church has a different definition than the United States government has of a definition. And so the questions I kind of ask you, are you okay with these two different definitions? Where do we go from here as we discuss this? Do you see any reason in the Catholic Church's definition of what a marriage is? So those are the things that we'll discuss in class. Stop sharing my screen with you. As always, like, comment, and subscribe, and I hope that you enjoyed this Edpuzzle video on Catholic marriage.